Vicki Nelson. She's the United Church of Canada Regional Staff for Congregational Stewardship Support. She's going to make a presentation on ways to give. And then there's going to be time afterwards if you have questions for Vicki or questions for any members of the foundation, which would be Frank, myself, Teresa, and Barry. Okay.
I'll take it away then.
We're ready to go.
All right. As you probably guessed, I'm going to use a PowerPoint because it was already up on the screen. So thank you, folks, for being here today with me. I'm really glad to get the opportunity to zoom in to Calgary. I am going to be offering a really general introduction to planned giving, and the folks at the foundation, like Phil just mentioned, can answer specific questions about the foundation and how to, best set up a gift with them. I also like to remind people that I am not a lawyer or a financial advisor, and so I'm happy to answer questions and, do the best I can. But if you have questions sort of related to your personal tax situation or your personal finances, I'm probably not your person to ask. And I'm sure there could be people in the congregation that could recommend experts to help in that way. You can see my screen, right? You can see this PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm using Canva, I never usually use the PowerPoint. So this is me, and as Phil said, I am the Community of Faith Stewardship Support person. I am in that role in Chinook Winds, where you folks are, as well as 4 other regions in Western Canada. And so what that job looks like is I really work with congregations and other ministries like United Church Camps or other ministries, campus ministries, etc., to kind of set some goals and achieve those goals around growing generosity and sort of shifting into a culture of deeper gratitude. I live and work in Regina, Saskatchewan, which is kind of geographically pretty in the middle of the area I serve, which is on Treaty 4 territory as well. And so I can't be there in person with you because I'm a few hundred kilometers away, but I am so grateful to technology. And I love, that's the one thing, the biggest benefit I think we got out of this whole pandemic is that we're just all more comfortable meeting this way. And in cases like this, we can get a lot done. So let's dive right in. I don't have a very long presentation. I'm going to do a quick overview, happy to answer questions, and then you can have a discussion and with each other. So giving kind of comes in 3 pockets. Most of us have these 3 pockets. So regular giving comes out of earned income over here. So that includes gifts from our pension income as well, or from, RSPs or whatever. If we're pulling money out of those to support our standard of life, that is this earned income, or like our salary or whatever, CPP, etc. This accumulated assets, not everyone has accumulated assets, like has an investment portfolio, but all of us will have some sort of estate at the end of our lives. So these are 3 pockets, and planned giving comes out of these 2 pockets. So that's the area we're going to talk about today. We're not going to talk about general giving from the earned income side. That's a different discussion, which maybe we'll do in the future. So planned gifts are special. They're not, monthly par gifts. They are different, and they sort of do different things. And so planned gifts are a testament of faith and a belief in generosity and taking care of others. So when we really value an organization, whether it's our congregation, the McDougall Foundation, the Humane Society, whatever it is, if we leave a planned gift or if we make a planned gift during our lifetime, that's really a testament that we believe in that organization. Almost all planned gifts, save sort of one type that we will discuss, are future and deferred gifts. So they usually come at the end of life. And also planned gifts are a really important and meaningful way to make a difference after we're gone, but also while we're still here. And so they can do lots of things. Planned gifts can be utilized in a number of different ways, just used for ongoing ministry, to grow or develop new programs, to help sustain a community of faith during times of transition, or to ensure the upkeep of your property. And this is sort of, I think, the focus of today, because that's the main work of the McDougall Foundation, is to, or at least that's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but is to work with McDougall United Church to ensure that property and the ministry that it supports, the property supports, can, keep going for decades and decades to come. So We did a recent survey. It's not so recent now. It's a few years ago, but we found that 1/3 of United Church people would consider including the church in their estate if asked. But only 8% of United Church people, and probably actually it's a little high, probably a little less than 8%, actually leave a legacy gift. So 33% are like, yeah, of course I would. But only 8 do. So, and I think that's for two reasons. One reason, because they're not asked. But guess what? We're all here today because I think that's why I'm invited, is this is an official invitation to consider a legacy gift or a planned gift. And I think that's, I'm sure Phil or whomever will speak at the end will speak to that you have consider the role that McDougall United Church and its facilities have played in your life, and consider making a gift to that organization. And so we're breaking through this shyness. We're not shy. We're asking, we're talking about it. And so the next step is for folks to actually set up their gift. That's the other sort of roadblock. People are like, oh yeah, I want to, I just haven't got around to it, or I need to call my lawyer or whatever. So that's a trickier one. I can't do that for anybody, but let's talk about the different vehicles that a planned gift can take shape in. And also let's talk about, like, why would we, other than we love our church and we want to take care of it, but there's actually some pretty compelling reasons to do it, like tax benefits. So this isn't the greatest chart, so I'll just talk through it pretty quick, but these are the Alberta numbers for charitable giving, if you're not familiar. So this is a 10,000 gift, whether that comes sort of as a bequest or as part of like a life insurance policy. This is kind of what that would play out with as far as tax goes. So federally, the first $200 you give, you get 15% tax credit. Provincially, you get a 10%. So not much. The credit is $30 and $20 respectively for the first $200. But after that, it goes up to 29% federally and 21% provincially. And Alberta actually has a really high charitable tax rate compared to other provinces. Saskatchewan's is quite a bit lower. So that translates into, for your $10,000 gift, you get a tax credit of $4,450. So almost 50%, just shy of 50%. And if you have made other gifts, that the $200 has already been given, then that number goes up a bit, right? Because that first $200 is a little bit lower. So that's a great incentive, because that's money that you get back from the government from your taxes. And estates typically spend, depends on the estate, of course, but there's typically a large amount of tax owing as an estate is sort of dissolved. And so this can really help offset the cost and ensure that actually more money, if you're leaving money to children, to, other organizations, if you want money left in, anything, less will go into taxes. The more you give away, more can come into places you actually want to see it. Oops, that's not how to switch my slide. So let's talk quick about types of planned gifts. So this is like a lot of information, but I can share the slides after, and yeah, because there's a bunch of different types, and I'm going to go through them quickly. But as I mentioned before, if you're like, oh, I hadn't considered life insurance, or, oh, I'd like to learn more about annuities, talk to a financial advisor. Annuities, the United Church can help you, but anyways, we'll get to that when I get to that. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. So bequests. This is the most common type of legacy gift. This is probably the one folks are most familiar with. And the most important thing for all of these, and I'll say it again later, is you just really should have an up-to-date and current will. Otherwise, the government takes care of your estate, and it can take years and years and years for things to be sorted out. And it can also just leave your family and the people that you've left behind in a really precarious and kind of stressful situation. So, and the government will just take more money that way too, because they're managing your will. So, or managing your estate. So have a will. Over 90% of gifts that come into the United Church come in through a bequest. And these can be things that are just cash, just be like, in my bank account, this is a gift for you, United Church, or like some churches accept gifts of property. Some churches, I worked with a church in Saskatchewan sort of recently that a man died and left his entire farm to the church. Is some work to sort of sort through that for the congregation, but it will probably be valuable to that congregation as they sort of liquidate the property. So it can be a percentage of your estate or a specific amount. So you can say, you know, of whatever's left, 20% goes to the church, or you can say, I want to leave $20,000 or whatever. And so the bequest can be in cash, or oh, I forgot to say, I give myself notes and then I just start talking. So can be cash or these other things. But before I say that, I was going to say that I was just going to make a comment about wills. I'm going to go back up to the top because I forgot that I looked up the stats that 56 of Canadian adults, 56% of Canadian adults do not have a will at all, have never had a will. And 15 to 20% of people that have a will have one that's out of date. So that's a huge percentage. That's essentially 2/3 of people do not have a will that is useful. So really, really do take a look at your will. If not if you don't have one, do it. And if you do have one, make sure that it isn't referring to people or places that are no longer, you know, organizations that have closed or people that are not in your life currently or anything like that, because you don't want your will to be contested. You want it to be up to date. And oh, and I should mention, I ordered some will workbooks. And of course, I forgot to put one on my desk right here, but I sent some will workbooks to McDougall, but they got delayed in shipping. So they'll be there next week. And this is a United Church resource that it just helps you sort of walk through the thinking around, you know, what are the, like, who do I need? Executors or trustees? You know, where do my children go? Where do I want to leave gifts? That kind of thing. So talk to somebody. I think the administrator at the church is maybe going to accept that shipment. And if you want to grab one, you can. I can also send them digitally and I'll share that with Joanne and Phil and they can share those too. Okay, sorry. So can be cash or can be these other ways. So another type of gift is a charitable gift annuity. And I'm just, I've been doing this job for 3 years now and I'm still just getting my brain around exactly how annuities work. But essentially, you set it up. If you're over 60, it's only available to folks who are over 60, unless you're married in a partnership. Then one person's over 60, the other person can be 55 plus. Anyways, so you set up a charitable gift annuity. You immediately receive a tax receipt. So you make a sort of large gift. You get a tax receipt, and it might be for a portion or all of the amount. It kind of depends on your age. And then the church, like the United Church of Canada, manages this. I don't know that the McDougall Foundation has this capacity, but somebody can correct me. But anyways, United Church Foundation manages it, and you get a sort of like dividends on your investment until you die. And so you get your tax receipt up front. You get money that is all or most of it will be tax free of those dividends you receive, just the nature of how it goes. And then whatever's left of the gift you gave after you receive your kind of dividends, that is donated to the charity of your choice. So like to the McDougall Foundation or McDougall United Church. So that's how a gift annuity works. If you have higher than average investment income, this is a really good way to sort of offset your taxes in your lifetime because you get your tax receipt right away. And as well, it will support McDougall Foundation in the long term. So my colleague Jess is actually like an annuities expert. So if this is something that you're like, oh, I do, you know, I am making a lot of investment income and it's costing me in my taxes, this is something I want to explore more. My email will be at the end of this presentation. You can get in touch with me and I can help connect you with folks at the church who manage that. Life insurance. This is pretty straightforward, but there are two different ways that life insurance can happen. So you can make the church, like McDougall United Church or McDougall Foundation or whomever, the beneficiary of a new or existing life insurance policy. And it doesn't have to be the entire policy. It can be a portion of. And so when that policy is cashed in, like when you pass away, you know, you said 50% is going to the McDougall Foundation, then that will happen. Your estate will receive a tax receipt, and that will offset the tax owing on your estate. The other way to do it is you can turn over ownership of the policy. So it'd be a whole policy. So essentially the church owns a life insurance policy on you, and you keep paying the premiums, but you'll get a tax receipt for those premiums the whole time you paid them. So again, it offsets your taxes now. Somebody who's a tax lawyer or a tax person, an accountant, can look at that in your own case and be like, oh, it would make sense for you to do it this way or the other way. So, and yeah, so that's a consideration. RRSPs, so registered investments, RSPs, RIFs.
Vicki, can we ask questions right now?
Sure, yeah, let's do it.
Go ahead.
Just on that life insurance policy, you said that you continue to pay the premiums, but did you say that the premiums become a tax deductible for the entire time you've been paying that policy, or just from the time you become, the church becomes owner?
I'm pretty sure it's just the
Yeah.
time the church
Yeah.
becomes owner.
Sure, okay, great.
Yeah.
Just clarification, sure. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
So this is, I think in this case, often in that case, people would maybe set up like a small life insurance policy for the church for that purpose, if that makes sense. So, yeah. Great question. Anybody else?
Would also, just for future, it would also make sense for somebody who's got a large insurance policy that they may have had for some time, but now the premiums are becoming difficult for them to maintain. So by signing it over to the church, then they'd at least be getting a tax receipt, which would actually lower the amount that they're actually paying for the policy, and yet keeping it viable and going.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I'm blabbing, so do interrupt me if there's questions. I can't. Yep.
If you do sign it over and the church is the owner, can you still have beneficiaries other than the church?
I don't think so.
You probably could, but your deductible amount would be based on the percentage that went to the church.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you, all you wise people in the room. Again, that's why I'm like, I can try to answer questions, but I'm not a tax expert, so thanks.
These
Okay.
are just wisdom highlights. So that comes with age. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, registered investment vehicles. So if you have, RRSPs or a RIF or a tax-free savings account, you can name the McDougal Foundation as a beneficiary. And there's different, so again, this is where, because TFSAs are tax-free, there's sort of a different, like your state will pay taxes on the RSP. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure on this one, actually. It's funny, I understood it, and then every time I try to explain it, I don't totally understand it, but they're not taxed as income on the estate. A TFSA that is would be donated to a church is not taxed, whereas a RIF or RSP does have to pay tax on the gains, but it's still the charitable credit will sort of offset the tax paid, if that makes sense, is my understanding. So there is some benefit, and there's probably somebody there that understands this better than me. So if anyone wants to speak up on that one.
Well, the RSPs and RIFs were tax deferred, knowing that tax had to be paid in the future.
Yeah.
So when it comes, unless you're doing a spousal rollover, if you have when the RSP eventually gets collapsed at your death, then and isn't being transferred to someone else, a spouse, then you have to pay tax on the full amount that's left in that in that pot. Okay, which would be 50%. Likely, because so by putting the church as a beneficiary, it means that then 50% of that money that you're paying tax on would be tax deductible. So you get 50%. So your estate would get 50%. Well, I don't. Anyway, you'd have more money come out of that pot than you would if you just transferred it. And it came about, was closed, and you paid tax on it. So
Yeah, thank you. That's perfect. And my understanding is, if your estate dissolved that and then made the donation, like as a sort of bequest, it's not quite as good as naming the church as the beneficiary directly. Like there's extra
tax.
tax.
Have a positive benefit.
Yeah.
It still would have a positive benefit for sure. But if you know that you are planning to leave your RIF or portion of your RIF to the church, it's easier to name it as a beneficiary instead of just having it come to this estate and then be paid out. Like it's still, they're both good, but one slightly, I think there's slightly more tax benefit. But I've also heard a lot of these rules are like in the middle of changing. So I don't know exactly how that's going to land yet, but my colleague, he just read something. He's like, oh, I've heard how charities are accepting stocks, mutual funds, that kind of thing is shifting. Like,
Well, the tax rule change every year, and it's gonna be what the tax rules are in effect at the time that you pass away,
Yeah.
so,
You don't know that.
and you don't know that, yeah.
it's true. Yeah, I think there might be, well, specifically for hold on, I'm gonna go for gifts of securities, like in life, like transferring stocks or securities. I've heard there's some changes because this is a very okay, hold on. I'm not gonna get into myself. I'm just gonna do the thing I'm doing, and then we'll talk in a second. So memorial gifts is not exactly a planned gift, but I do like to mention these for folks because often when somebody passes away, in lieu of flowers, please make a gift to blank organization. Depending on if conversations have been had with your family, they don't know who. They're like, they had cancer, so let's make it the Cancer Society. So if you want to see those gifts come to an organization that gave you life and meaning, like your church, then make sure you mention that. You can include it in your sort of like plans and intentions around your death, but also communicate that with your family because that's important. And yeah, that's it. So memorial gifts we can also make in memory of others. So if you're thinking about, you want to acknowledge somebody who's passed away in the congregation, you want to make a gift, consider making it to the church. So, okay, gifts of security. So this could happen in life. This is sort of that accumulated wealth pocket. And so this type of gift needs to not be registered. So it can't be a TFSA.
Okay, it's just somebody getting creative, it's a little drummer boys.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, great. So yeah, it can't be registered, but the sort of tax benefits of this type of giving, if you have access to this type of investment, are really great because you save on capital gains and by donating directly or transferring it directly to the charity. So, excuse me, for folks who are maybe like where I've seen this play out the most is folks who are retired and have investments and might, cash in some of those investments to live, like to have as income, instead of then cashing in as income and then making their monthly par donations to the foundation or to the church or whatever. They're like, oh, actually, let's just do a transfer of some of our stocks or mutual funds or whatever, and save a bunch of tax on doing it. So this is like even worse table, but it kind of gives a sense. So here is the transfer, here's the sale. So if you bought mutual funds for $2,000 and then the day you go to sell them or transfer them, they're worth $10,000. You've made $8,000 on your investment. That's great. If you transfer it to a charity, $0 are taxable. If you cash it in, you have to pay tax on half of the capital gains. So, and my understanding is around 43%. So anyways, on $4,000, that's all of a sudden $1,700. Then in this, if you transfer it, you get your donation receipt for $10,000. The McDougall Foundation gets a donation for $10,000. If you sell it, you get a donation receipt for $8,260. And that is the gift that the McDougall Foundation gets as well. And so aside from also paying like the loss of the charitable tax credit and paying tax on the gains, the sort of cost to you is it's almost $4,000 in the end. It's $3,910. And then plus obviously the organization gets less money. It gets, I'm not great at math, but it gets $1,800 or $1,740 less. So my understanding, I think Phil can correct me on this, but the McDougall Foundation can process this type of transfer, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
we can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so it's pretty simple. So talk to folks there if this is a way that you are able to make a gift, because it's pretty sweet. Actually, it's a benefit to both the organization and we often, because we give to organizations we love through our lives and our working lives, and you know, we give monthly, or we give, you know, through envelopes every week, or however, we sort of think that that's how we should keep giving. But sometimes there's some strategic, if we have access to these other types of investments, there's some strategic changes we can make to sort of expand that. So the other thing I just want to mention is just getting our affairs in order. So can't say it enough, have an updated will. Make sure you have at least one executor named, and tell that person so they know where to find, they know what to expect when you pass away. If you can, keep all your important documents together, let your executor, or let your spouse, or let your children, or whoever know where to find those. Name beneficiaries where they ask for them on investments or other things. That'll help you avoid probate fees when those are being processed. Communicate your wishes and intentions. Just talk to your family. Make sure they know what you're hoping for. You know, talking about money can be awkward. Talking about death can be awkward. And I'm challenging you to do them both together. It can be liberating for everyone to get that out in the open and know what your hopes and dreams and wishes are, and what you want to support financially. You know, be it like your children, your church, whomever. Just have those conversations, and then really do look at your taxes. Like I said before, we've always given this way, so we keep giving that way, but there are some decisions we can make to sort of maximize our impact with our finances. And then always think about your ministries you love. My colleague always calls them his charitable children. So he has 3 kids, and in his estate, he actually has, I think, 5 kids, because he has his charity children that he loves. And so his estate will be divided 5 ways among his children and his charity children. And so do think about the ministries you love, what you want to support, and how you want your sort of legacy to live on. Finally, that's my email address. It's just vnelson@united-church.ca. If you have questions about annuities or anything I might be able to help with from the United Church side of things, but y'all know a lot and you have your leaders of the foundation sitting with you. So they're probably even better to speak with. So Frank or Phil or Teresa, or I can't remember who else was all there. So that's it. That's all I had to say.